Wow. You guys all quietened down. I didn't even have to wave exaggeratedly. Good morning, Renfrew Baptist Church. My name is Raiden Luse, son of Brian Luse. If you've been with us for the past 2 weeks, you will know that we are coming to the end of a 3-part series on how to read Old Testament narrative. Last week, we looked at some techniques that Old Testament authors use to grab our attention and communicate meaning. The week before, we introduced ourselves to the Hebrew Bible and looked at the overarching narrative. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using everything we've learned to go through the story of Samson in Judges 13 to 16 and see how noticing these techniques might change some of our ideas about who Samson is. Now, if you're here for the first time, if you weren't here for the last 2 sermons and you're thinking, what is going on? What is this guy yapping about? Don't worry too much. I am hoping, Lord willing, that this will be an okay sermon by itself and that it won't be too confusing without context. Anyway, we've got a lot to get through because it's a long story, so we're just going to jump right in. Samson is the final judge in the book of Judges, and we talked about this in the first week of our series, but a little bit of context for the book. Judges is about the holy people of God, Israel, trying to live in the promised land. They've established themselves there, they've got towns, and they're trying to live there without any form of centralized government. They're trying to figure out how to manage themselves. And it's not going well. They're stuck in cycles of apostasy, worshiping foreign idols, and then repentance. God raises up a judge who saves them. There's some peace. Then the judge dies, and they go back to worshiping idols and getting bullied by their enemies. And it's just going round and round and round, and it's slowly spiraling downwards until we get to Samson, who's going to be the big finale. He's going to bring this book out with a bang. And so let's read the beginning of his story in Judges 13, verses 1 to 7. It says, "The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren, having borne no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, 'Although you are barren, having borne no children, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now be careful not to drink wine or strong drink, or to eat anything unclean, for you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor is to come on his head, for the boy shall be a Nazirite to God from birth. It is he who shall begin to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistines.' Then the woman came and told her husband, 'A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like that of an angel of God, most awe-inspiring. I did not ask him where he came from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, "You shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the boy shall be a Nazirite to God from birth to the day of his death." All right, on my next slide, I've got a couple highlighted sections from this big passage that we just read. This is the introduction to Samson, his origin story. First thing to notice, 40 years under Philistine rule. I'm not sure, but potentially could be an allusion to 40 years of the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. Maybe a bit of intertextuality there. A time of chaos, uncertainty, and punishment. I don't know. And next thing we've got these restrictions that Manoah's wife must follow. 3 restrictions. And the reason that she has to follow these restrictions is because Samson, the unborn baby, is also going to have to follow these as part of his Nazirite vow. We're going to get into what that is in just a little bit, but the 3 things that she is not allowed to do, and that by extension Samson is not allowed to do, are going to be very important for the story. We're going to want to remember them. So Manoah's wife cannot eat strong or drink anything, drink any alcohol, strong drink, stuff like that. Cannot eat unclean food. And Samson, eventually, he will not be allowed to shave his head. Okay, so no unclean food, no alcohol, no shaving head. This is going to be important. And by the way, if you're not familiar with what unclean food was, that was just food that under Jewish law, when consumed, would defile you. You weren't allowed to eat it because it would make you unclean. And as well as this, the angel mentions that Samson is going to begin to deliver Israel. The angel does not say that Samson will, but that he will begin to. So we're going to want to keep that in mind as we read the story. And then we have a bit of repetition here. So the angel comes to Manoah's wife, tells her some stuff. And then Manoah's wife goes to Manoah and repeats almost verbatim what the angel said. There's only one slight difference. She says, "For the boy shall be a Nazirite to God from birth to the day of his death." The angel doesn't say that. The angel just says that he's going to be a Nazirite from birth. But she adds that little bit, from the birth to the day of his death. And we can almost understand how maybe you'd get those confused or you'd conflate those two ideas. But I think this is maybe a little bit of foreshadowing that really Samson, he's not going to be a Nazirite to the day of his death. It's going to be a little bit wonky. Anyway, let's move on. Intertextuality, we've got a bit here with this idea of a Nazirite vow. What on earth is that? Our primary information about what a Nazirite vow is comes from Numbers chapter 6, verses 1 to 21. It's a little bit unclear. It's a bit ambiguous, but essentially it's a type of vow. And in Numbers 6:5, it says, "Until the time is completed for which they separate themselves to the Lord, they shall be holy." So it's a type of vow where the person undergoes these certain restrictions. The ones in Judges match up with Numbers pretty much. No alcohol, no unclean food, and no shaving. And they're separating themselves to the Lord for whatever reason. We're not sure when that vow is meant to end, how long it's meant to last, or what its purpose necessarily is. It's a little bit confusing. Anyway, we're going to see this Nazirite vow come into play during Samson's story. All right, the next bit comes in. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say. After this, there's this whole almost like comedic section where Manoah prays to God, "Hey, can you send the angel, the man of God, back so that I can hear what he said?" Because Manoah wasn't present, if you remember. And God's like, "Sure thing." And the angel of the Lord comes back, but comes back to his wife instead, leaving out Manoah. And his wife is like, "Manoah, come quick, come quick. The man I spoke to is here." And there's this whole joke where Manoah doesn't understand that the angel is an angel. Manoah seems to think he's like a prophet, a man of God. And Manoah's like, "Ooh, what is the rule that shall govern the boy's life?" And the angel has to repeat himself almost exactly, be like, "I told your wife this." And then Manoah's like, "Oh, cool, do you want to stay for dinner?" And the angel's like, "No, I don't want to stay for dinner. If you want to do something with your food, sacrifice it to God." So they make a sacrifice, and the angel like goes up in the flames or something crazy like that. And Manoah freaks out. He's like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to die." And his wife's like, "Honey, we're not going to die. Okay? If we were going to die, why would the angel have told us about all this stuff about this boy that I'm going to have?" Maybe just a little bit of comedy to keep this story light when it's not going to stay light for super long. It's quite a dark story. Some of our keen listeners/readers may notice this whole section sounds quite similar to some other sections in the Bible. An angel shows up to a woman and announces that she is going to have a child. Sometimes that woman is barren, like in the case of Sarah, Abraham's wife, and sometimes she's not, like Mary from the New Testament, Gabriel showing up to her and announcing a birth. Usually it signifies someone important is about to get born. Then the next bit of our story is in Judges chapter 14, verses 1 to 4, where it says, "Once Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw a Philistine woman. Then he came up and told his father and mother, 'I saw a Philistine woman at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife.' But his father and mother said to him, 'Is there not a woman among your kin or among all our people that you must go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?' But Samson said to his father, 'Get her for me, because she pleases me.' His father and mother did not know that this was from the Lord, for he was seeking a pretext to act against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines had dominion over Israel." The Philistines are the Israelites' enemies. They are ruling over them as a foreign body and imposing restrictions on them, rules. They're the bad guys, essentially. And there's this bit of iffiness. Samson is going to Timnah, he's going to Philistia, and he's searching for a wife from there. But this presents a bit of a problem because in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 1 to 5, God seems to make it clear that you're not meant to do that. You're not meant to take wives from the peoples in the land, the pagan people in the land. We mentioned this a bit last week about Ruth and the complexities that come up around marrying foreigners. And Samson's parents are the voice of that concern. They're saying, "Really? Do you want to marry one of our enemies, the uncircumcised Philistines, someone who is not part of the covenant with God? Why don't you just marry one of the Israelites, one of our people?" But Samson doesn't care. And there's this little bit of information that we get as readers that the characters do not. God is using this as a pretext to act against the Philistines. God is about to spark up some drama. But this introduces a bit of ambiguity in the text. What is God doing? Is he bending his own rules in order to accomplish his goals? Or is he making use of Samson's sin in order to accomplish his goals? And this is going to be a theme we're going to see throughout this story of ambiguity around what is God doing, what is Samson doing, and what is Samson responsible for, and what is God responsible for? Because there's going to be this repeated theme about the Spirit of the Lord coming on Samson and giving him his strength. And then it's a little bit unclear, is what Samson does with that strength condoned by God because the Spirit of the Lord is enabling it? Or is it just something that he has and can misuse? Can he misuse his powers? It's going to get messy. It's going to get confusing, but we're going to get into it. It's going to be fun. Real quick, I'm going to stop to talk about some details, some big details to do with location. I think I have a map. Boom, I have a map. Biblical history and geography, if you're like me and suck at just normal geography, is going to be tricky. It's going to be complicated. But quite often the places that events happen in are actually quite important. And in this story, we can see that a lot of the drama is occurring on the border between Philistia and Israel in the tribe of Dan. Timnah is in Philistia, Zorah is in Israel, but they're very close together. And this is what, one, allows the action of the story to take place, as well as that it gives us a picture into Samson's identity and is going to play into his identity crisis. He's constantly hopping back and forth between Israel and Philistia. He's constantly hanging out with Philistines. It's unclear what is his identity. Who is he? Does he belong to the Israelites? Does he belong to the Philistines? It's a little bit unclear, and the locations in the narrative contribute to the building of this theme. All right, then we're going to move on to Judges chapter 14, verses 5 to 9, where it says, "Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah. When he came to the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion roared at him. The Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and he tore the lion apart barehanded, as one might tear apart a kid, like a goat, not a child. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson. After a while, he returned to marry her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion, and honey. He scraped it out into his hands and went on eating as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey from the carcass of the lion." All right, this section, if we're just glossing over it, if, like me, sometimes you get bored reading your Bible and your eyes start to glaze over, you're going to miss what the significance of this passage is, because there's a lot going on in the subtext that the narrator is not being overt about. A couple problems are raised. So Samson is defending himself, tearing apart this lion. Okay, fine. He's getting some honey from this lion. Okay, fine. But why is he not telling his parents about it? What is Samson hiding? The answer is in the subtext. Remember those vows we talked about. Samson is not allowed, one of his vows, he's not allowed to eat unclean food. And under Jewish law, honey that you have taken from a dead body, the dead body of an unclean animal, is definitely unclean. This honey is a no-go. Samson, by eating it, has just broken one of his vows. Gone. And then he's gone to his parents and casually given them the honey and defiled them as well. For all we know, at this point in the story, his mother may still be keeping her vows. We don't know. Either way, he's callously gone and defiled them and doesn't really seem to care too much and doesn't bother to tell them about it. One vow of 3 down. And this kind of thing happens all over the Bible, where a character makes a decision that is just not a great one. It's not a good decision at all. But the narrator is not going to say, hey, by the way, Samson did a bad thing. Hey, by the way, Samson just ate unclean honey. Did you notice that? The narrator's not going to do that. The narrator is going to rely on you and your knowledge of Jewish law to set up conflict and tension. And this can lead to some confusion because a lot of things happen in the Bible that are really, really bad and not okay. And most readers want the narrator to step in and say, hey, this was evil, this was bad. But that doesn't happen. And so people seem to believe that that must mean that it's okay or that the Bible approves of this. It's not always the case. Usually there's stuff going on under the surface, little hints, clues that a character is going off the rails a little bit or is veering away from the right path. Okay, let's move on to Judges chapter 14, verses 10 to 14. His father went down to the woman, and Samson made a feast there, as the young men were accustomed to do. When the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Samson said to them, "Let me now put a riddle to you. If you can explain it to me within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments." So they said to him, "Ask your riddle, let us hear it." He said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. But for 3 days they could not explain the riddle." We, as the reader, know the answer to the riddle. It's the lion with the honey inside of it, right? Out of the eater came something to eat. But there's a couple things going on in this passage. So Samson throws a feast, a wedding feast, to celebrate him marrying his wife. But the word in Hebrew for feast is mishteh, which comes from the Hebrew verb shatah, which means to drink. And he's throwing this as the young men are accustomed to do. If we think about our own young men in our society, what are they accustomed to do? What kind of feasts do they throw? They throw drinking parties, right? A mishteh is a drinking party. And this is a strong signal that it's very likely Samson has just broken the second of his vows, 2 out of 3 down. Granted, it's not explicit, okay? It doesn't say Samson drank alcohol, but we're kind of led to believe that through the subtext. And as we read the rest of the story, it's going to make more sense and it's going to become more likely. As well as this, another interesting thing to note, Samson is given wedding companions. The Philistines have to assign him friends to his own wedding. Another contribution to this idea that his identity is a little muddy. Where are his friends? Where are his family? Why does he need to be given friends from his enemy nation to be at his wedding? And why, when he gets those assigned friends, does he immediately start messing with them and trying to win money off of them? Because that leads into the next thing, 30 linen garments and 30 festal garments. I have no idea how you pronounce festal, festal, whatever. But that's a lot of money. That's incredibly expensive in ancient times because of the effort and the labor involved with making clothes. This is an incredible amount of stuff that they are wagering right now. As well as this, there's a little bit of wordplay. Remember wordplay from last week? We've got an example here with Samson's riddle. In Hebrew, it sounds like me'ha'ochel yatsa ma'achal ume'az yatsa matok. And he's sort of almost rhyming the word for eating one, ha'ochel, with the word for food, ma'achal. They come from the same root. And this is just an example of a quirky little, it's a riddle. It's meant to rhyme. It's meant to be kind of fun and roll off the tongue. In the Hebrew Bible, being able to come up with these riddles on the spot is a sign of wisdom. It's a sign of cleverness, being able to spin out these fun little bits of poetry, which gives us another insight into Samson's character. He's a clever person. He's wise to some extent, or crafty to some extent, which we kind of see from the fact that he's just winning money off of these suckers that have been assigned to be with him at this party. So for the rest of the wedding, the Philistines are trying to figure out this riddle, and they just can't do it. So what do? The natural thing that we would all do in this situation. They go to his wife and threaten to kill her and her family if she doesn't find out what the answer to the riddle is from Samson. So she pesters him, and he's like, come on, I haven't even told my parents. Why would I tell you? But she continues to pester him. And finally, he gives her the answer. She immediately goes and tells her people so that she doesn't die. And then they go and tell Samson the answer on the final day of the feast. What is stronger than a lion? What is sweeter than honey? This is a little bit of foreshadowing. If you know the story of Samson, later on there's going to be a situation in which Samson has some precious bit of information that he's going to give away because a woman has pestered him a lot. And the Philistines tell him the answer, and Samson knows what's happened. He just told his wife, and now they know. How did they figure it out? He says this fun little line. He goes, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have guessed my riddle. Seems that he's not too pleased with his wife at the minute, comparing her to an animal. So Samson, again, does the natural thing. He goes to Ashkelon, and he kills 30 people and takes their clothes. He kills 30 Philistines, takes their clothes, and gives them away. It says in verse 19, then the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and he went down to Ashkelon. So again, we have this example where the Spirit of the Lord is empowering him to go kill 30 random people, steal their clothes, and give them to the folks that answered his riddle. Seems a little bit muddy, and it's not particularly great. He also then just he's run out of the feast. He's abandoned his own wedding to go do this. And so his wife gets given away to one of his wedding companions. Her father is just like, well, I guess he doesn't want her anymore. I'll give her to someone else. And then, let's see, Samson goes down to Timnah a little while later, and he wants to go into the room of his wife. He's brought like a goat as a little gift to make up. And her father is like, hey, so about that, I totally gave her away to someone else. Do you want her younger sister instead? And this really ticks Samson off. In Judges chapter 15, verses 3 to 5, Samson said to them, this time when I do mischief to the Philistines, I will be without blame. So Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took some torches, and he turned the foxes tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. When he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Sorry, I missed a line there. Standing grain of the Philistines, and burned up all the shocks. He's burning all their fields. Okay, so Samson's really mad, and he goes and burns a bunch of fields. And notice he says something interesting. This time, when I do mischief to the Philistines, I will be without blame. It's almost like he doesn't really believe that what he did last time was entirely blameless. He doesn't think himself too spotless when he killed those random 30 people. As well as that, we've got an interesting bit of intertextuality going on here. So he's got 300 foxes, and he's doing some weird thing. He's like tying their tails together and putting torches on them. I think I have a slide about intertextuality. There we go. This blue slide has a more literal translation from my professor and sort of outlining the idea. The vague gist of it is that 300 foxes with torches is similar to the story of Gideon early in Judges, where he's attacking a Midianite camp, and he's got 300 men all with torches, and they scare them all with all their waving and shouting. Some of the more intricate stuff up on this slide is examples of repeated phrases and words in Hebrew that sound very similar, that kind of strengthens this case and makes it seem more likely that there's a reference going on here. Don't worry too much if you can't grasp everything on this slide. There's a lot of stuff on here. Also, next slide is even more stuff that we don't have time to go through. But if you want the slides afterwards to go look through this yourself or to go try to find these connections yourself, just ask me. If you want any of the slides from this series, just ask me. I'll shoot them to you. Either way, there's a bunch of intertextuality all over the story of Samson that is connecting him with every single judge that has come before him, or every judge that has a story, because not all the judges have stories in Judges. And here's a list of them. And the idea is that Samson is the final judge, and he's like the ultimate one, the master judge. And he's connected to all of these, not necessarily because he's awesome and cool, but just because he's the finale. And there's going to be all these fun connections. The only one from this slide that might be hard to figure out is the Hebrew one. I think this one's quite fun. The word for bees in Hebrew is devorim, which sounds an awful lot like the name Devorah, or Deborah, the name of the only female judge in the book. Okay, we can't spend too much time on this. We got to plow on. Let's see. So essentially, the Philistines find out that Samson has burned their fields. So what do? They burn his wife and her whole family. And he says, if this is what you do, I swear I will not stop until I have taken revenge on you. He then goes and he obliterates their forces. It says he struck them a massive defeat, hip and thigh, which just means he, again, blasted them. And then he goes and he hides in a cave in the cleft of the rock of a town. The Philistines, knowing that he's there, they go and they storm the place. The place where he's hiding is in Judah. And they start raiding this town called Lehi. And the people of Lehi are like, why are you coming out to fight us? What have we done? And they're like, Samson is in there, and we need him. So what do the Judahites do? They go to Samson, and let's see. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of a town. And they said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then have you done to us?" He replied to them, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." Okay, we're beginning to see a pattern. Samson is someone with a very short temper and a spirit for vengeance. As they did to me, so I will do to them. If this is what you do, I will not stop until I have taken revenge on you. That's what he's oriented around. And we can understand that as readers. His wife and her family just got burned. But the Judahites are raising this point, hey, don't you know you're causing trouble for us? You're just messing with our overlords just for your personal vendetta. And they're raising these concerns, and Samson, again, it's almost like he's being petty. He's like, I don't care. I'm doing to them what they did to me, acting like a child. Anyway, the Judahites and Samson strike a deal. He says, I'll go with you bound with ropes as long as you don't kill me yourselves. They're like, fine, we won't kill you. So they bring him out to the Philistines, and let's see what happens. In Judges 15, verses 14 to 17, when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that has caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. Then he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached down and took it, and with it he killed 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. When he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and that place was called Ramat Lehi, which means Jawbone Heights. Okay, so once again, the Spirit of the Lord has empowered Samson to commit incredible violence. And once he's done with that, he sings a little song about the jawbone of a donkey that he's used. In Hebrew, it sounds like, Bilchi ha-chamor, chamor chamoratayim, bilchi ha-chamor, heketi elef ish. This is another example of wordplay. A grotesque, slightly grim bit of wordplay, the heaps upon heaps referencing the bodies, presumably, that he's heaping up. But it's a play on words because the word for donkey, ha-chamor, sounds a lot like the word for heap, chamor. He's again making a clever play at the expense of his enemies. Again, pointing to the fact that he's wise, he's clever, he's coming up with these on the spots, even if he's also incredibly violent. After this, we have an excerpt where Samson goes to Gaza and he sleeps with a prostitute. And then in the middle of the night, they try to ambush him, and he leaves in the middle of the night. He picks up the gates of Gaza, walks off with them, and plants them on the top of a hill in Hebron. I have no idea what this story is doing here. I'm not sure what the purpose is or what its function is, so we're going to plow on because we don't have time. In Judges chapter 16, verses 4 to 5, we enter the end game for Samson. It says, after this, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines came to her and said to her, coax him and find out what makes his strength so great, and how we may overpower him, so that we may bind him in order to subdue him. And we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. Is this sounding familiar to you guys? Philistines coming, trying to get a woman who's close to Samson to get something out of him? So then we have this little excerpt where Delilah tries to get this information out of Samson. He lies to her and tells her the secret of his strength, and she gets the Philistines in to ambush him, and then inevitably they fail. He tells her, oh, you need to tie me with 7 fresh bowstrings. Nope, Philistines, gone. Oh, you gotta tie me with new ropes. Nope, Philistines, gone. You have to tie the 7 locks of my head into a loom. I think that's what this is saying. Nope, that's also a lie. It doesn't work, and the Philistines get routed. This is maybe intended, again, to be humorous, a bit of farcical humor at the expense of the Philistines. The reason for which my lecturer always said he thought it was meant to be funny because it's meant to make a very dark story more palatable. We're going to see that Judges is about to get very dark, and this is meant to maybe help us get through it a little bit with these jokes. Anyway, let's see what happens. Oh, sorry, I have a quick aside about names. Slide. There we go. Samson's name in Hebrew is Shimshon, and it comes from the Hebrew word for the sun, Shemesh. Samson is like the sun. Delilah's name comes from the Hebrew word Lila, which means night. You've got Samson, the sun, and Lila, night. I've always kind of interpreted this as Samson's sun is about to set. He's about to meet his match, and it is about to go dark for him. Anyway, just a fun little detail there. Moving on, in Judges chapter 16, 15 to 17, we read, "Then she," Delilah, "said to him, 'How can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me 3 times now and have not told me what makes your strength so great.' Finally, after she had nagged him with her words day after day and pestered him, he was tired to death. So he told her his whole secret and said to her, 'A razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, then my strength would leave me. I would become weak and be like anyone else.'" Samson has just revealed his secret. What is his secret? His secret is his 3rd vow. Remember how he had 3? He broke 2 of them. He's only got 1 left, and he's just told her about it. Delilah comes in, and she gets him to fall asleep on her lap, and then has someone come in, a barber, to chop off all his hair. Then the Philistines show up, and let's read again what happened. "So the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles, and he ground at the mill in the prison. But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved." So it seems to me, in this story, Samson's strength is tied to his vow, his Nazirite vow. It's like he has 3 cords connecting him to the strength. He severed 2, and then finally Delilah severed the last one for him. And he gets taken by the Philistines, and he's essentially forced to work as a donkey in the mill, just pushing things around. He loses his eyes as well, and this is where the story is starting to get dark. And let's just read, here we go. So Samson gets captured, his eyes gouged out, and then the Philistines decide to have a big celebration where they're going to worship their god Dagon, and they're going to have Samson come out. They have him come out and they have him dance for them. So blind Samson dances for them, and they celebrate the fact that they've defeated their enemy. And then the end of Samson comes in chapter 16, verses 28 to 31. "Then Samson called to the Lord and said, 'Lord God, remember me and strengthen me only this once, O God, so that with this one act of revenge I may pay back the Philistines for my 2 eyes.' And Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, his right hand on the one and his left on the other. Then Samson said, 'Let me die with the Philistines.' He strained with all his might, and the house fell on the lords and all the people who were in it, so that those he killed at his death were more than those he had killed during his life. Then his kindred and all his family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of his father Manoah. He had judged Israel 20 years. There it is. The end of Samson is as gory and grotesque as his life was. He has a fittingly violent end. But what are we supposed to make of Samson and his character? Who is he? What is going on in this story? If I'm being completely honest, I'm not sure. The things we can identify are that even in the end, his goals seem to be angled towards vengeance. He wants to get revenge for the 2 eyes that have been taken from him. He doesn't make decisions that are particularly good for his people. At no point is he leading anyone or being a real judge of Israel. He's just sort of running around killing things. But then again, the Spirit of the Lord is what is enabling him to do all this stuff. And so it's tricky trying to figure out what's going on. What does God condone? What does God not condone? It's all a bit of a mess. And honestly, things in Judges after this are going to get even more messy. Things start to fall apart. There's this awful story where a Levite's concubine is brutally abused and killed. And this sparks a bunch of infighting in Israel to the point where the tribe of Benjamin almost dies off completely. And the reader is left with this question, what are we meant to do? We try to govern ourselves. It's just falling apart. What is the answer to our problem? And the solution, or the extension of the problem, is going to be picked up in the book of Kings, where we're going to see, okay, what if we try out a king? Maybe that will solve this mess that we've gotten ourselves into. All right. That's us. We've come to the end of our 3-part series. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to me yap, for allowing me to show up and stand in your pulpit. I hope that this has been interesting to you guys. I hope that you've maybe gotten something out of it and the different points I've made. Something that I spoke about last week, and I want to reiterate, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like this is all a bit much, don't worry. It's not all about head knowledge. It's not about knowing all the techniques and having all the thing down and having a bunch of scripture memorized, though all that stuff is helpful. What's going to be most important when it comes to reading your Bible is your relationship with God and your ability to listen to the Spirit. While logic and knowing a lot about the Bible can help you pick out clues in the text, as you can see, my conclusions here, theologically, aren't super anything really. I'm still pretty uncertain about what this text is doing. And really getting into the deep end of what God is trying to say to you is going to come down to your relationship with him and how much you are willing to listen to him. Again, if you're just at the beginning of your journey reading the Bible, I would encourage you just get into it. The more you read it, the more this is going to become easy and the more fun it will be, hopefully. I've found this fun. Hope you guys have too. Before we wrap up and pray, I just want to give an opportunity if anyone has any questions, just want to open the floor. This has been a lot we've covered in the last 3 weeks, so if anyone has anything they want to raise, no guarantee for any answers, but I want to give the opportunity. Joe.
First off, thanks. Knowing our friendship, probably was one of the most excited to hear about your series and just seeing how you've sort of progressed in ease is worth noting. One of the questions is, okay, are there any books that you would probably recommend as a guide for the beginner and say someone who's looking to be slightly more advanced?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say start from the start. Start from Genesis. That is where the meat happens. And just skip everything that is hard. And when I say hard, I mean skip the genealogies, the lists of endless names and people. Skip Leviticus when it gets really tough and messy with laws. Try to stick to the narratives. Try to stick to the stories, the stuff that we've talked about today, because that's going to be the easiest to get into. And then when you're more advanced, I would say you want to go back and you want to read the tough bits. You want to read Leviticus. You want to read all the laws and all the stipulations and things that the Israelites are told to do, because they are actually important. As much as they're confusing and messy and hard, they're going to get referenced a lot. So I would say if you're just starting out, start from the start and try to do as much of the stories as you can. Maybe steer away from the prophets because they're going to get messy. And if you like poetry, get into that. But if you're looking for more advanced stuff, what I did was just start to finish, just again and again and again. And if that doesn't work for you, feel free to jump around. But yeah, I would say just try and do as much of it as you can. Any other questions? All right. Thank you again so much. Sorry for kind of running over. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much that you have been with us these past 3 weeks. Thank you so much that you've been moving in this room and that you have been communicating to each and every one of us. I pray that going forward, you would zap from their minds anything I've said that was unhelpful or not useful to them. And I pray that something might stick of your word that would help us all going forward to engage with you more honestly and more excitedly. I pray for your blessing on each and every one of us, and I just pray that this time would help us to love you more. Thank you for loving us, God. We love you. Amen.